Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. How is your Saturday? Hopefully, we are having a fantastic and super Saturday. If not, I am still glad that you're able to carve out some time with me to help you guide through today. Today is another one of our great live tutoring sessions. We will be covering statistics, probabilities, how that information works. Also, we'll be covering Operation Saturday, which of course we are doing today, multiplication. So, what I want to show and guide and have you guys understand is that, hey, we are in this together. So, if you have any questions, any math questions, any tutoring questions, you can comment them below. I am here to help, and I hope you are having a successful and fantastic Saturday. So, if you can hear me, please click the like button, heart button. Also, send some hearts, send some thumbs up just to let me know that you can hear me. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just got your message. So let's get started, everyone. First up, we have statistics and probability. What is statistics? What is probability? Statistics is the science or study of data. It allows you to collect, analyze, understand, and present what you have found based on the data. Whether it's the minimum height, the maximum height, average, the median, the mode, all of that good stuff comes through statistics. Now, the best way to explain probabilities is that it is the chance that something will happen or how likely an event may occur. So, is there a chance? Is it likely? Is it unlikely? Is it impossible? The best way I can explain it is if you come when you are playing a game of dice, or if you are flipping a coin, what are the chances that you get hail, head and tails? Um, Whether you get heads or tails. Sorry. Okay, so flipping the coin, you should be able to see whether, hey, it's heads or tails. So, how depending on how many times you flip is how many times it may occur. So, say for instance, you have one coin and you flip it 3 times. What are the odds that each flip is going to be tails? Each flip is going to be heads. One flip would be tails. Which one of those flips would be tails? It all depends on the probability of each one. So say for instance, you of course do have the one coin and you flip it twice. Average, of course, of getting heads, both heads would be 2 out of 4 because you have 4 chances in a scope in total of getting the heads twice. Same thing if you try to get tails twice. And so, main thing is when dealing with probability, You'll either have an equal likely event to occur, or you'll have something that is never going to happen. Like, say, for instance, you have marbles and you have blue marbles, red marbles, and purple marbles. It's likely and even a chance for you to get the red, the purple, or the blue marbles. What could be an impossible would be if you are trying to find a brown marble or a green marble. Well, that's not something that will happen because there are no green or brown marbles. All you have are red, blue, or purple marbles. So that is the probability of impossibility. Also, unlikely, meaning what is the chance of you not picking a certain color? So, say for instance, you have the blue and the red and the purple marbles. What, how, or what is the probability of you not picking one of those colors? Well, the best way to understand of not picking one of those colors would be to take say for instance, you have 2 red marbles, 4 blue marbles, and 3 purple marbles. So now, what is the probability of you not picking the 3 purple marbles? Well, to not pick the 3 purple marbles, that means you would be picking either a of the 2, 4, and 3 added together. That is 9 marbles in total. With those 9 marbles in total, what is the probability of not picking the purple, meaning not getting one of the 3? That means you have a probability of 6 out of 9 of not picking the purple marbles, because that means you're only picking out the red or the blue. So probability says this is this is how many chances you have, or possible chance or possible likely occurrence for picking red marbles and blue marbles, conversely not picking the purple marbles. Now, I am going to go further into statistics. Statistics, of course, is the study of data. So the question now is how to read the data. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that sound like? Okay, so when you have an average of numerical data, when you have a collection of data, you can view it in different types of ways, such as the dot, plot, and histogram. These two types of graphs allow you to view the range of the data that is given. So, histogram will show you the frequency of, or the frequency range of the data that is given. So the heights of black cherry trees, on average, it ranges between 60 and 90 feet. So if you're counting or measuring the height of each tree, say for instance in that forest, how many of those trees fall within that range? So between 60 and 65 feet, there are 3 trees. Same thing for 65 to 70. Then you have you have in between the range of 70 and 75, the trees is 8 of those trees. And then between 75 and 80, you have the 10 trees. And the frequency lets you know how many of those trees are within that range. Conversely, the dot plot gives you the exact number of one particular thing, and you can count exactly how many. The dot plot gives you a chance to count exactly how many of the data that you're given. So for this example, you have the numbers of the brothers and sisters. So the question probably was in the class that, okay, in this class, how many of you have brothers and sisters? So 2 people said no siblings. 3 people said they had either one brother or one sister. 2 people, 2 was the number of brothers and sisters, and the average people and the number of people that had either 2 brothers, 2 sisters, or a brother and a sister were 5 people. And so with a dot plot, you will always get a range of numbers that allow you to see whether or not the numbers of something, but it still gives you a visual adaptation of, or a visual picture of what the data or the range of the data that is given. Now, you also have the box and whisker plot. This is used to show groups of number and data and how they are spread, which means it gives you your average, it gives you your middle number, the number that is more frequent than others. It also gives you your range. It also allows you to see what's the minimum, what's the maximum, and then it breaks down into what they consider the 4 quartiles, or the 4 quarters of the average numbers that you have. So now we also have the circle graph. The circle graph is based on one topic, and that one topic gives you a percentage, or lets you know what piece of the people of how they view certain things. This is where you get polls a lot of times from. And so circle graph gives you the average or the percentage poll of different things, such as, for example, we have the favorite pizza toppings. Well, with the favorite pizza toppings, you can see that the majority of people who voted on the different categories of the favorite pizza toppings, 50% was pepperoni, 25% was cheese, 15% was sausage, and 10% was supreme. And so with those choices, you could see that, hey, as a whole, majority of half of those people loved pepperoni. And then it was a scatter cheese, the sausage, and supreme. So a tenth only liked supreme, a quarter of the people liked the cheese, and of course 15% liked the sausage. And so a circle graph gives you a visual of comparing parts of a whole, or comparing parts to each other. So based on looking at the circle graph, you can see that if you wanted to say, you can say, hey, majority of everyone love the pepperoni pizza compared to cheese, sausage, and supreme. And that's how you could compare those two. Now, what can be found in this data? You can find the mean, which is the average of the numbers. meaning taking the data, adding it all together, and then dividing by how many numbers of that data. So what would that look like? Scroll this up a bit. So say for instance, you have data points, and those data points are 3, 5, and 7. When you're looking for the average, all you're doing is adding them together and then dividing by how many of them that you have. So you would add the 3 plus the 5 plus the 7, and then you divide it by 3 because that's how many data points or data information that you have. So if we add 3 plus 5 plus 7, that's 15. And if I divide it by 3, that means my average of this data stat is 5. Now the average is usually a summarization of how, basically asking how can these numbers correlate with each other? What is the average high score? What is the average times you can shoot a basketball shot without missing? Usually when you have an average, it's always a normalcy or a coming together of all the numbers that you've collected, and then finding how to make it work overall for the population the population and the sample and the data that you are calculating for. So if you have the average, then you also can find the median. The median, simple put, is the number in the middle. The number in the middle, the most number in the middle. And by when I say the most number in the middle, it has to be the exact number in the middle. So just like we had the 3, 5, and 7, when you have an odd number of data points, if you take away the first number and you take away the second number, you should have one number in the middle. So with 3 data points, it's always the second number that is considered the median or the middle number, because it's the furthest or most middle number that you have. So you have 3, 5, and 7. Middle number will always be the second number. That's if you have an odd data set. If you have an even data set, such as 4, 6, 8 numbers. So say for instance, instead of it being 3, 5, 7, we have 3, 5, 7, and 9. Well, when it comes to even numbers, there is an average or midpoint you must find in the middle between the 2 most middle numbers. So if you have 4 numbers, if you have 6 numbers, if you have 8 numbers, there's always a middle 2 numbers that you have to add together and divide by 2 in order to get the median of an even data set. So to get the median of an even data set, you would add the 5 plus the 7 and divide it by 2. So 5 plus 7 gives me my 12. And of course, 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. So now the median of this set is 6, whereas the median of the first set was 5. So always remember, odd number sets, the most middle number. How you can find it is by checking off a number on each end. And this is what I mean by checking off a number on each end. Say, for instance, I have 1, 3, 5, 7, 7, 9, 15, 21. Okay, so with these numbers, I should be able to find my median by checking off one number on the end, one number on the first end, one number on the last end until I get to the middle. So I would check off 1, then 21. Check off 3, then 15. Check off 5, and then 9. As you can see, this is an even data set because you are now left with 2 of the most middled numbers. And of course, you would take those 2 numbers, divide them by 2, and then that would give you your median. Whereas if I only had one number when I finished checking my numbers off, then that would be considered my median or my middle number. So whenever you are checking off your numbers from one end to meet in the middle, how you know you have reached your middle number is either you have 1 or 2 numbers. 1 number means you have an odd set, and that is your middle or median. If you have 2 numbers, that is an even set. You take those 2 numbers, add them together, divide by 2, and that's how you get the median of an even set. Any questions? Okay. Next up, we have the mode. Mode, simply put, it is the most number often seen in the set of numbers. So let's pull back the 1, 3, 5, 7, 7, 9, 15, 21. Based on when you're looking for the mode or the most frequent number, that means the number you're going to see more than once. In this data set, of course, the mode would be 7 because you see 7 more than once, or it's happening more often than all the other numbers. Now, what if you have no numbers that are repeating or most frequent? That's considered you don't have a mode. No mode. It is no mode whatsoever. So if there's no number that is repeating, that is considered a data set that has no mode. Now, what if you have a data set that has 2 modes, meaning they're both repeating at the same number or frequency? That is called bimodal, meaning it has 2 modes. Bimodal, BI, which means 2, modal, mode. it has two modes, meaning there are two numbers repeating in the same frequency. But if one starts repeating more than the other, that is when it becomes the ultimate mode, still the mode. Now you have the range. The range, get back to my original numbers. The range is the difference of the largest to smallest number. Simply, all that means is you are subtracting the biggest number from the smallest number to get your range. So you would take 21, subtract it from 1, and that will give you a range of 20 numbers. Now, interquartile range, all that means is you're taking your upper quartile and subtracting it from your lower quartile to get the interquartile range. That usually happens when you're dealing with a box and whisker plot. So if you look at the box and whisker plot, this is your interquartile ranges. You have the lower quartile, the median, and the upper quartile. What are quartiles? Quartiles are the values that are divided, your set is divided in a list of number into quarters or 4 sections. So from the minimum number, which of course would be 1, maximum number will be 21. There are 3 quartiles that you have to focus on. The lower, which is the average of the lower half of the numbers. The median, of course, is your most middle number. The upper, which is your upper half of the quartile. So with the numbers that we currently have, when you're dealing with quartiles, this would be considered Q1. This would be considered Q3. Q2, of course, is your median. So because this is an even set, it's the 2 most middle numbers. So 7 plus 7 is 14 divided by 2. That gives me my Q2 or my median, which is 7. So now you add up the first 4 numbers, divide them by 4. That gives you your first quartile, because quartiles are basically the averages between the lower quartile and the upper quartile. All the quartiles are the averages of those numbers. So we have 1 plus 3 plus 7 plus 5, which of course is 16. 16 divided by 2, that gives me not 2, 4. Sorry about that, guys. 16 divided by 4, that gives me 4. So now that is my lower quartile or my average of my lower half. Then, of course, you have the 7 plus the 9 plus the 15 plus the 21. That gives me 52. 52 divided by 4. I don't know why. I just want to divide by 2 so bad. So apologize for that. So 52, we divide that by 4. And that gives me 13. So the average of the lower half is 4. The average of the middle is 7. And the average of the upper half is 13. So when you're drawing a box and whisker plot, know that with those numbers, you have a minimum or the lowest extreme, which is 1, maximum extreme, which is 21, because those are considered the outer numbers that begins and ends your data set. Then the average of the lower half would be 4. The median, which is the most middle number, that'll be 7. And of course, the upper average or upper quartile is 13. And so your quartiles always fall in the middle of, or the average of, the minimum and the maximum number. And anytime you want to find the range of the quartile, which is called the interquartile range, you would take the upper quartile and subtract it from the lower quartile in order to get your values of the middle 50% of your overall data. That would look like 13, which is my upper quartile, minus 4, which is my lower quartile, which of course gives me 9. So the average range of numbers is 9 for the lower and the upper quartile. Any questions? Okay, next up we have Operation Saturday. So, what is the operation for today? We have multiplication. What is multiplication? Multiplication is when you take one number and add it together a number of times. So, everyone remembers 2 plus 2. Well, 2 plus 2, of course, is 4. Now, say if you add another 2, that would make it 6. Then you add another 2, and that'll make it 8. And so you are adding a number of 2's a total number of times. You're taking the same number, but you're adding it a certain number of times. Multiplication came about when you could say, hey, if 2 plus 2 is 4, and 2 plus 2 plus 2 gives me 6, then that means I can take 2 times 2, which ultimately means 2 groups of 2, and that gives me 4, or 3 groups of 2, which is 3 times 2, and that gives me 6. And that is how multiplication came about. And so now we have things called skip counting, math facts, worksheets, anything that'll allow you and teach you how to multiply. And so what I'm teaching today is how you can handle the average multiplication factors that are sometimes a little difficult to do, such as double-digit multiplication. On average, you know that when you multiply, you have 2 times 2, or 4 times 6, or even 5 times 12. That is considered basic multiplication. That is when you're taking a single digit, multiplying it to a single digit, or taking a single digit and multiplying it to a multiple digit. But it always requires one of the numbers being a single digit. Now, what does it look like when you have two numbers together, but both of them are more than a single digit? How do you multiply them? There are many of ways that you can multiply these numbers on average. Here are some tools that I use to help me multiply. So, say for instance, you have 15 times 12. Old school way taught us that you had 2 times 5, which was 10. Bring down your 0 and you carry your 1. Then 2 times 1 gives me 2. Then add the 1 that you carried gives me 3. Just like addition, when you carry over a number, you add that number. Once you multiply, then the carryover is always the number you add. So now we've done 15 times 2. Next up is to multiply 15 times 1, or multiply 15 times 10. Old school way would say, okay, after I multiply 15 times the 2, then I would add in a 0 as my placeholder. And then I will now start multiplying by saying 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 1 is 1. Then I will add those numbers together, and that'll give me 180, because that 0 plus 0 is 0, 3 plus 5 is 8. And of course, there's nothing adding to the 1, so you add the 1. But now there is new and different ways that you can now learn how to multiply these numbers, such as if I bring back my 15 times 12, there's something that I was taught by one of my students that I thank her for to this day. She taught me the dinosaur or the turtle head. And so what you would do is first draw the turtle or the dinosaur head over the numbers that you are going to multiply first. So then you have 2 times 5, of course, is still 10, and I carry my 1. And then once I carry my 1, then 2 times 1 gives me 2, plus 1 still gives me my 30. Now, you are going to lay a turtle or dinosaur egg here, which lets you know not to put anything under the 0. After you have laid your dinosaur or turtle egg, then you start multiplying the 1 to the 15. So now 1 times 5 gives me 5. And then 1 times 1 gives me 1. I still add it together. And so the number that's on top of the dinosaur egg, you crack it over the dinosaur egg, which still leaves you with 0. Then you add the 3 to the 5, which is 8. And of course, you still bring down your 1 because there's nothing adding to the 1. And so the turtle and the turtle dinosaur concept allows you to see that, hey, I can visualize knowing that I first multiply from right to left, and I draw a head over the first number that I multiply with, and then I draw a second head over the next number I multiply with, and always lay your dinosaur or turtle egg. Next, we have the array box, which I really, really love. And so, say for instance, of course, you are multiplying 15 times 12 once again. The array box breaks your numbers down into place values. If you remember this week and last week, we learned place values of 1 digit all the way to 6 digits. And so to multiply them, you break them down into their place value parts. So we know that 15 broken down is 10 and 5, and 12 broken down is 10 and 2. So now, how do I use the box above to do my multiplication factors? Well, 10 times 10, that gives me 100. Because 1 times 1 is 1, and then 2 more zeros still give me my 100. Then you have 10 times 5, which is 50. Because 1 times 5 is 5. And since you have a 0, you place 1 0. Great things about multiplying with 10. The number of zeros determine how many zeros you put behind your average number. So now you have 2 times 10, which is 20, because 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 0 is 0, which gives you your 20. Then, of course, you have 2 times 5, which gives me my 10. So now, what can I do with this box? You can either add downward or vertically, meaning you can add the 100 to the 20 and the 50 to the 10, or you can add the horizontally or across, where you take the 100, add it to the 50, or the 20 and add it to the 10. Either way, you are adding all of these numbers together. What I normally do, I go straight across. 100 plus 50 gives me 150. 20 plus 10 gives me 30. And when I add those numbers together, that gives me my 180. With this box, you can use multiple numbers and in multiple ways. You can even multiply a double digit to a single digit. Just make sure you are splitting the boxes in the proper order. So say, for instance, instead of us having 15 times 12, we have 15 times 2. With an array box, We still have our 10 and our 5, but the only number we're multiplying is by the number 2. And of course, 2 times 10 is 20. 2 times 5 is 10. 20 plus 10, that gives me 30. Any questions? All right, let's move on. Early in the week, I know I showed you guys something about multiplying fractions. However, if you did not catch it, we're going to go over it again. So, how do you multiply fractions? 2 ways to multiply fractions. First way is one, say for instance, you have 1 over 2 times 4 over 5. Well, 1 times 4 gives me 4, and 2 times 5 gives me 10. And the reason why I multiply straight across is because when you multiply fractions together, you take the numerator times the numerator and the denominator times the denominator. And those numbers stay on the numbers that are on top stay on top. The numbers that are on the bottom, they stay on the bottom, and you do not cross multiply them, if that makes sense. Which means you're not going to take the 2 multiplied to the 4 and get an 8, and then turn around and say 1 times 5, and then you end up with a 5. You do not cross multiply when the multiplication is on one side. So 1 times 4 is 4, and 2 times 5 is 10. Now, there's another thing we were doing earlier, which was the least common multiple and the greatest common factor. Well, 4 and 10 has a great common factor. That common factor is the number 2. So I would divide both numbers by 2, which would make the 4 become a 2 and the 10 become a 5. Now, you can do this with the inside of the original problem. The only way you can do this is if the numerator or the denominator of the first fraction can be cross-divided by the numerator or the denominator of the second number. Meaning, can 1 and 5 be simplified, or can 4 and 2 be simplified? Well, 1 and 5 are already in their simplest form. Plus, they do not have any other number in common besides 1 and 5. 4 and 2, however, they have a common number of, you guessed it, 2. So you can divide both numbers by 2 to go ahead and give yourself the simplified or the lowest term of this fraction. So what does that look like? Bring back my 1/2 times my 4/5. So 4 and 2 have the number 2 in common. Notice the 4 is in the numerator and the 2 is in the denominator. If both were numerators or both were denominators, you cannot take the common number and divide it out of both numbers. So now I can cross out my 4 and say 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So then I take my newer numbers and I multiply them to my other numbers, such as the 1 times the 2, that gives me 2, and the 1 times the 5, that gives me 5. So you can take these numbers and you can go ahead and simplify them before or after. But if you do simplify before, make sure that the number in the numerator and of the first or second fraction and the number of the denominator in the other fraction, it must be opposites of each other. So you must have one numerator from the first fraction and one denominator of the second fraction, or one denominator of the first fraction and one numerator of the second fraction, in order to simplify or make your fraction in its lowest form. Next, we have our keywords that you find in word problems for multiplication. You use these words to see how these can be, how the question is asking you what to do. So these keywords that you have in multiplication, these are the words that you'll see that allow you to know, hey, I am going to multiply in this problem when I see this. So first word we have you see is of. Of is a good indicator that you may be getting ready to multiply. For example, Grandpa gave half of his share to Johnny. Say, for instance, Grandpa had 4 cookies and he gave half of his share to Johnny. How many cookies did he give to Johnny? Well, half is considered 1/2. And so if he gave half of his 4 cookies to Johnny, he multiplied the 4 by 1/2, which would look like this: 4 times 1/2. So now, how do I multiply a whole number to a fraction? Well, a whole number with a fraction, all you have to do is place it over 1. If you remember improper fractions is where the numerator is bigger than the denominator. And most whole numbers is just improper fractions that are over 1. So now, once I place my whole number over 1, I then can multiply to get my answer. So 4 times 1, that leaves me with 4. 2 times 1, that leaves me with 2. 4/2, or 4 divided by 2, or what times 2 gives me 4. Those are the main ways you can describe division within multiplication. The answer, of course, would be 2. So Grandpa had 4 cookies. He gave half of his cookies to, or half of his share of cookies to Johnny. How many cookies did he give to Johnny? He gave Johnny 2 cookies. So whenever you come across the word of, more than likely, especially if it says half, a fourth, or anything that's dealing with fractions, more than likely, if you're getting a fourth of something, half of something, a third of something, 2/5 of something, you are going to multiply the first number that you were given by that fraction. Next up, of course, you have the word times. Times is always an indicator that you're getting ready to multiply. John has 4 times as many jelly beans as Jake. Say, for instance, Jake has 5 jelly beans. Well, if Jake has 5 jelly beans and John has 4 times that many, that means John has 20 jelly beans. Next are my 2 favorite, which are multiplied by and product of. Multiplied by, product of. Simply put, you take these 2 numbers and you multiply them, or you get the product of, and still multiply these 2 numbers and get the product or the answer to this multiplication problem. Just like the population multiplied by 12 over the last year. Say, for instance, the population originally was 20, and it multiplied by 12 within a year. Say, for instance, there was a home sale, an average home sale of $1, and it multiplied by 12 because everyone was buying a new home in that new town, in that current town. So now you have 20 people who have now, the 20 people population have now multiplied by 12. So now, instead of it being 20 people, we now have 240 people in this town. So that's what it means when it says multiplied by. And of course, the product of 4 and 7, meaning what is the answer when you take 4 times 7? That gives me 28. Next up, we have the increase and decrease by. Increase and decrease mean that you are going to multiply and then add, or multiply and then subtract. The population of tigers in the wild increased by 10%. The population of the rhinoceros living in the wild decreased by 25% in the last 10 years. So if you hear increase, you're multiplying by that percent and then you're adding it to the original total, or you multiply by the percent and you're subtracting from the original total. Increase, adding, multiplying and adding. Decrease, multiplying and subtracting. And usually when you see a question like that, it always has a percent. Percent is usually a multiplication factor when you're increasing by or decreasing by. Speaking of factor, you also have the factor of. The school increased by a factor of 12. So the population could have been 250 and it increased by a factor of 12, meaning multiplied by 12. Another way of saying factor of is multiplied. Those two are interchangeable. So what you would do is take the 250 and you multiply it to the 12, and that will give you your current school population. Also, you'll see certain words like every, at this rate, in all, and total. Those words are interchangeable with addition, but make sure you paying attention to the key words that surrounds the in all and the total, at this rate, and every, because that will let you know either you're going to add them or multiply them. Such as there are 12 rows with 6 plants in each row. There are 8 rows with 7 plants in each row. How many plants are there total? How many plants are there in all? Those type of questions usually have two numbers where one is happening that many times. So you have 12 rows of 6 plants. So each row has 6 plants. So if one row is 6, 12 rows is 72. If one row is 7, 8 rows is 56. Because each row has the same number. You are taking one number and you adding it together that many times. Also, the word each. Each is a very indicator that you are getting ready to multiply. That word allows you to deal with things such as money. Like in the example problem below, you have each pair of socks cost $1.50. How much would 6 pair cost? So, of course, you would take the 150 and you will multiply it times 6. So now 6 times 0, that gives me 0. 6 times 5, that gives me 30. So I bring down my 0 and I carry my 3. And then 6 times 1 gives me 6, plus 3 gives me 9. Now, when you are multiplying with decimals, key thing of multiplying with decimals, you always move to the number of decimals that you have. So right now we have 2 decimals. So starting from my right, I would move my decimal 2 decimal places just so I can have the proper number for my multiplication answer. Anytime you are multiplying and dividing with decimals, you have to make sure if you are moving the decimal, make sure you are moving it into its proper place. So each pair costs $1.50. How many did 6 pair cost? 6 pair cost $9. Last but certainly not least, you have the double, quadruple, and triple. Anytime you have words like that, you definitely are getting ready to multiply, because tripling something means it's one thing that is happening 3 times. Doubling, it is happening 2 times. Quadrupling, it is happening 4 times. Keywords for double, double means 2. Triple, tri means 3. Quad means 4, quadruple. Pentuple, octuple. A lot of times when you see words like that, that means you, like pentuple, that's 5. Octuple, that's 8. But more than likely, you'll see double, triple, and quadruple more than you would ever see pentuple or octuple, because normally that is considered 5 times and 8 times, and they'll just say 5 times or 8 times. So when you are multiplying, make sure that you are paying attention to your keywords. The keywords will always help the average of what you're looking for and making sure that you are understanding what are you doing in that word problem. Am I adding? Am I subtracting? Am I multiplying? Am I dividing? And these keywords are very important to where when you see them, you're like, hey, I know that I'm getting ready to multiply because I see these words here. Any questions? Well, you guys, this is all I had for the lesson for today. So now we are tuning in for our live portion session where you can ask me any math or tutoring questions. If you want to rewind and review the lesson that we did today, you can if you're in the Facebook page, click the YouTube link listed in the description. You will see the live on the YouTube description. Once you click on it, you can rewind the live and it'll give you our step-by-step detail of what we went over today. So if you have any questions for math, any questions for tutoring, you can comment them below. Of course, I am here to help because Miss Chris loves helping everyone. Know that any question that you have, it is very important and very significant. No question is stupid. No question is not important. Every question is important because the question you may have now is some question that someone will have later on. So never be afraid to ask questions. That is how you learn and grow in knowledge. You'll never learn or grow if you never ask questions. Other than that, any questions, comment them below. I hope you are having a successful and fantastic Saturday, and thank you for tuning in. Good evening and good afternoon. I hope you're having a fantastic and wonderful Saturday. If you are just now tuning in and you would like to review the lesson for today, you can click on the YouTube link listed in the description. If you are on Facebook, once you click on the YouTube link, you will click on the live. The live has a two ways you can rewind it. You can grab the red bar line that allows you to scroll or scrub backwards. That allow you to rewind and review what we learned this morning or this afternoon. Also, you can double tap to your left, and that allow if you double tap it multiple times, it allow you to go to a certain part that maybe you heard, but you wanted to hear it again, just in case you needed more information. Now, if you have any questions on what we learned today, if you have any math questions that you're needing help with, if you have any tutoring information that you need, you can comment that below. Other than that, I am here to help with all of your mathematical needs. Of course, we are going to get through this beautiful thing together, and I am so glad and thankful that you have thought enough of me to let me help you get better at knowing math. So, if you have any questions, of course, you can still comment below. Other than that, have a successful Saturday, and thank you for tuning in. Hello, thank you for tuning in. If you're just now tuning into our live and you want to review the lesson that we had for today, you can click the YouTube link that is listed in the description. Once you click on it, you can click on the live. The live allows you to rewind so that way you can see our lesson for today. We are within our last 30 minutes of our tutoring session online. So if you have any math questions or if you have any tutoring questions that you would like, such as what are the tutoring hours? Do you tutor every day, some days? And what does that look like in case you are interested in one-on-one tutoring outside of the live? Other than that, I am here to help. You can comment that below, and I hope you are having a super Saturday. Thank you. Hello there again, and thank you for joining us back for our tutoring session. We have already concluded the lesson for today, which was on which are statistics, props, which are probabilities, as well as multiplication. We don't die, we multiply. So, everything we covered today can be reviewed and rewind once the live ends. But if you want to review it while we are still online and you have any questions, you can click on the YouTube link listed in the description below. There you will see the live. You can click on the live and you can rewind it with the red bar or double tap it to the left. Other than that, any math questions or tutoring questions, you can comment them below because I am here to help. All questions are important and they definitely are significant. Hopefully, you're having a successful and super Saturday. I'm Miss Chris, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for tuning in. Hello, everyone. If you are just now tuning in, we are in the middle of our live tutoring session. We are within our last 15 minutes. So if you have any math or tutoring questions, such as days we're tutoring, what time we're tutoring, any one on ones outside of the live tutoring, I am here to help. All you have to do is comment below. We did have a lesson for today, which was Operation Saturday of multiplication and learning about statistics and probabilities. If you would like to review that while I am still live, you can rewind it on our YouTube page by clicking the link below in the description if you're on Facebook, dragging the red line, or you can double tap it to the left, and that'll allow you to rewind and review what we learned today. Other than that, I am here to help. If you have any questions, of course, still comment below. Hopefully, you're having a successful Saturday. I'm Miss Chris. I thank you for tuning in. Let's continue to finish strong. Hello, and thank you for tuning in. We are now within our live tutoring session, our last 10 minutes of our tutoring session. So, if you have any questions for math, any questions, all of them are very important and significant. You can comment them below. If you have any tutoring questions, such as when are we tutoring, how often are we tutoring, all of that good stuff inside the live and outside the live. You can comment that below. Other than that, if you are looking for the lesson that we did today, you can rewind for this lesson by clicking on the YouTube link if you're in the Facebook page that is located in the description. Once you click on the YouTube page, you'll see the live. Once you click on the live, you can rewind by grabbing the red bar and scrubbing it to the back, or you can double tap it to the left. Otherwise, if you have any questions, all questions, you can comment them below. I am here to help because Miss Chris loves to help. Hopefully, you are having a super and awesome Saturday. And I'll thank you for tuning in. All right, guys. Now it's the time where we wind down our tutoring session. I want to thank you so much for tuning in with us. The live will end in a few moments, so you'll be able to rewind and review what we learned today. If you have any questions outside of this live, you can inbox me, you can DM me, you can text me at 205 542 5062, 205 542 5062. Also, you can inbox me and DM me on all of my Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram pages. Know that all questions will be answered or they are received. Other than that, please continue to learn and grow and understand the world of mathematics. I know the pandemic threw everyone for a loop, but we are in this together. And the best way to do this together is to learn together. So, if you do not have any questions, I am going to end this live. I hope you have a wonderful, successful, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, as Mary Poppins used to say, Saturday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I look forward to seeing you again. See you guys on Monday at 5 p.m., where I will be dealing with my 7th and 8th graders. And then after that, we are taking a week break, and then we're kicking in full gear for my high schoolers. If you have any questions on that, of course, you can still inbox me, text me, as well as DM me in all of my social media platform or the phone number that I commented, which is 205 542 5062. Other than that, have a wonderful Saturday. I see you guys on Monday. Thank you for tuning in. I am Miss Chris. This is Mathematics for You Tutorial Services, where we are changing mindsets one problem at a time. Good night.